beradaptasi dengan kebiasaan baru. Kesehariannya sih sama, tata caranya saja yang agak berbeda.
Before we start this event, I would like to inform all participants to format their account name as we require it to be. Thank you. You can look it at the room chat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to GENOME International Webinar by MLT Student Association of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta 3. The first international webinar by our MLT Student Association live from Health Polytechnic of Jakarta 3 building. It is great honor for me, Mulyasari, as Master of Ceremony, to be here. We'll guide and welcome each one of you to this webinar. I would like to give you information about the number of the webinar participants. Currently, there are 2,811 total participants who have been registered. And I want to give a warm greeting and say hello to all participants from 4 continents. They are Timor-Leste, Philippines, Pakistan, India, Iran, Nigeria, Egypt, United Kingdom, Ethiopia, Chile, Nepal, and of course Indonesia. Especially those who abroad and willingly for joining with us, even there are time differences between our country. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next few hours, this event will provide you with plenty of opportunities to discuss and share knowledge and insight about COVID-19. However, before we are starting, our agenda today are opening, singing the national anthem of Indonesia, greeting, reciting a prayer, speaker session, discussion or Q&A, and the last agenda is questionnaire and closing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to sing our national anthem, Indonesia Raya. To all participants, please raise. Pas banget kamu. Thank you. May all be seated now. The Honorable Director of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, Mrs. UP Supartini, SKP, Master of Science, whom we respect, First Vice Director of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, Mrs. Sri Mulyati, SPD MKes, whom we respect, Second Vice Director of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, Dr. D. Made Riasmini, SKP, MKes, SPCOM, whom we respect, Third Vice Director of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, Mr. Bagio Mulianto, SPD MKes, whom we respect, all department heads and sub-department heads of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, whom we respect, Student Coordinator of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, whom we respect, Head of Department of Medical Laboratory Technologies, Dr. Andes Mega Mirawati, M. Biomed, whom we respect, Student Coordinator of Medical Laboratory Technologies Program, Mr. Haryadi Amak, SSE, and all the management that cannot be mentioned one by one, whom we respect, our speaker, Dr. Miswar Fatah, Vice Chairman of DPP Patelki, whom we respect, our speaker, Heru Setiawan, SKM, MBiomed, MLT Lecturer at Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III, whom we respect, Dr. Ruben Snapshkazinzios, Director of on IPD and Healthcare Company since October 2009, America Diagnostic Jakarta, Indonesia, whom we respect, our moderator, Mrs. Hanifa Ahmad, and Mr. Adwitya Waluyo, and all participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let us say thanks to our God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has given us His blessing and mercy, especially when this COVID-19 pandemic situation, so that we can gather in this place without something wrong happen. And I wish all audience was in good health and keep spirit up. Honorable speaker, participant, ladies and gentlemen, before we start this event, let us pray in accordance with trust respectively. May God make this rewarding event for all of us and the event will run smoothly and conducive. Pray start. Amen. The honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we would like to request the Director of Health Polytechnic of Jakarta III to deliver her welcome speech and afterward to open this webinar officially. Good morning, Mrs. UP. Please give your speech. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Mrs. UP Supartini, SKP Master of Science.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Master of Ceremony for this international seminar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat pagi. Salam sejahtera untuk kita
Pagi,
semuanya.
Bu.
Pagi, Bu.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay.
The Excellency International, the international speakers, Mr. Ruben Sinzius, Director of an IPD and Healthcare Company, America Diagnostic. Thank you for coming, Mr. Ruben, and supporting this international seminar held by the School of the Medical Lab Technologies. Terima kasih dan kepada Bapak Heru Setiawan SKM Biomed, kandidat doktor. Pak Heru, terima kasih telah mendukung kegiatan mahasiswa dan bersedia menjadi pembicara pada kegiatan international seminar ini. Kemudian Dr. Miswar Fatah MSI, Specialty and Research Manager, juga as Vice President of Patelki. Terima kasih Pak Miswar sudah hadir dan bersedia menjadi narasumber pada kegiatan international seminar kali ini. Terima kasih kepada yang saya hormati jajaran manajemen Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta III seluruhnya, yaitu Vice Director Academic Affair Ibu Wadir 1, Wadir 2, Vice Director of General Affairs and Finance, Vice Director 3, Students and Alumni, and also Collaborations Affairs. All the management staff in the jurusan TLM School of Medical Lab Technology, Ibu Megami Rawati, and all the staff, Ketua Prodi D3, Ketua Prodi D4, and all the lecturers, and also the management staff in jurusan TLM. Yang saya hormati Direktur Poltekkes, para wadir atau dosen dari Politeknik Kesehatan Kementerian Kesehatan Indonesia yang berkenan hadir pada kegiatan International Seminar kali ini. Thank you for your coming and attend this international seminar. And also to the participants, surprisingly, that we have some international participants from India, Timor-Leste, Egypt, Nigeria, Pakistan, Philippines, Iran, United Kingdom, Ethiopia, Chile, Nepal, who already here in this international seminar. Thank you for all your coming and join this international, be an active participant. Dan tentunya kepada seluruh peserta dari Indonesia, mahasiswa jurusan TLM, juga para dosen TLM dari seluruh institusi pendidikan tinggi. Di sini tadi disampaikan oleh Master of Ceremony ada 2.609 yang sudah register, dan mudah-mudahan bisa masuk semua, baik itu melalui Zoom ataupun dengan YouTube. First of all, let's thanks to God that because of His Almighty, we could attend this international seminar. Puji syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, karena rahmat dan karunia-Nya kita dapat hadir pada kegiatan international seminar yang diselenggarakan oleh jurusan TLM Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 with the very good theme in this seminar, the effect of COVID-19 pandemic to the development of diagnostic methods by medical lab technologies. Ya, tema yang sangat bagus dan relevan dengan kondisi saat ini. Kita masih menghadapi berbagai permasalahan yang harus kita selesaikan, yang harus kita cari solusinya, terutama terkait dengan pemeriksaan laboratorium. Sejak ditetapkannya pandemi, mohon izin saya mungkin campur bahasanya karena mostly the participants are Indonesian, but also several from abroad. Sejak ditetapkan pandemi COVID-19 di Indonesia, semua komponen bangsa di negara ini sibuk melakukan berbagai upaya, terutama di bidang kesehatan, tidak berhenti melakukan berbagai upaya untuk menurunkan angka kejadian dan melakukan berbagai upaya pencegahan dan penanggulangan COVID-19 ini. Pemerintah, para pakar, kelompok akademisian, termasuk kita, Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 bersama Poltekkes Kemenkes yang lain tentunya, ikut serta melakukan berbagai upaya, berperan secara aktif. Kita membentuk tim Satgas COVID-19, bekerja sama dengan beberapa rumah sakit, puskesmas, ya, melakukan kampanye prevensi dan promosi, ya bagaimana supaya kita bisa terhindar, masyarakat bisa terhindar dari COVID-19, dan juga bagaimana penanggulangan yang harus dilakukan secara dengan protap kesehatan. Since the pandemic COVID-19 was started by the Indonesian government in Indonesia, all the component of these nations, Indonesian, have been already implementing the several efforts. The government, the expertise, the academicians, including we are Head Polytechnic of Jakarta 3, has also involved in the efforts to combat COVID-19 in Indonesia. Several efforts to prevent and also to promote the healthy has already been implemented, collaborate with the hospitals and also several health center surrounding in Jakarta. Ibu dan Bapak yang saya hormati, adik-adik peserta yang saya hormati juga, ya all the participants. Beberapa jenis pemeriksaan laboratorium sebagai tes diagnostik yang sudah dilakukan di Indonesia, seperti mungkin sudah sering dibahas, semua orang masyarakat pasti mengenalnya. Rapid test, kemudian PCR, dan juga ada belakangan teman-teman di jurusan TLM menyebutnya tes cepat molekuler atau TCM. Nah ini seperti apa ini dilakukannya? Ya, banyak dibahas di televisi dan juga media massa tentang keakuratan dari semua pemeriksaan ini, pemeriksaan laboratorium ini. Apa, yang mana yang lebih efektif? Apakah harus semua dilakukan? Lalu bagaimana protap yang harus dijalankan oleh ATLM, oleh medical lab technologists ya, ketika mereka berada di laboratorium supaya aman untuk diri mereka sendiri, untuk adik-adik mahasiswa yang praktek, untuk teman-teman yang bekerja sebagai praktisi di di lapangan ya. Ini bagaimana caranya supaya aman dalam bekerja, aman untuk dirinya dan juga termasuk aman untuk pasien. Para narasumber kali ini akan menjelaskan dan memberikan wawasan kepada semua peserta, sehingga harapannya setelah seminar ini ada peningkatan pengetahuan kepada seluruh peserta. Ibu dan Bapak, mungkin ada para dosen atau pengelola atau praktisi, dan juga para mahasiswa jurusan TLM yang hadir pada international seminar ini, diharapkan meningkat pemahamannya dan luas perspektifnya terkait dengan pengembangan metode dalam pemeriksaan diagnostik terkait dengan COVID-19 ini. That's several laboratory tests have already been tested in our country, in Indonesia. Namely, rapid test, PCR, and also quick molecular test. Yeah, this is we call TCM, and many discussion in the television, in the media massa, every day we could see it's discussed about the laboratory test, which one the more effective, the most effective, which one the most could be a choice, or maybe all the tests or laboratory tests should be implemented. Our speakers, international speakers, Indonesian speakers, would explain about this broadly. So we hope that after this seminar, after this international seminar, all the participants could increase the knowledge, your knowledge related with the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially development of method of test laboratory. Barangkali itu terutama, oleh karena itu terima kasih banyak kepada seluruh narasumber yang hadir dan bersedia berbagi ilmu pengetahuan dan juga pengalamannya pada international seminar kali ini. Serta saya berterima kasih, kami berterima kasih kepada dukungan seluruh manajemen, khususnya di jurusan TLM, para dosen, dan semua tenaga kependidikan yang mendukung kegiatan internasional seminar ini. Terlebih khusus kepada panitia, organisasi mahasiswa di jurusan TLM yang dengan sangat sudah kerja keras ya menyiapkan acara internasional seminar ini dengan baik. Semoga nanti lancar sampai selesai, sampai akhir acara, dan bermanfaat untuk semua peserta. Hopefully, this international seminar could give a benefit to all the participants. Yeah, after this seminar, all the participants could increase your knowledge, your broaden your perspective related with COVID-19 and all the aspects related with the laboratory test on the COVID-19 issues. Demikian mungkin sambutan dari saya. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya. Mari sama-sama kita buka acara international seminar ini dengan mengucapkan basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Semoga Allah Subhanahu wa taala meridhoi dan memberkati kegiatan ini. Officially, this international seminar has been opened. Demikian, terima kasih. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mrs. Yu. Test. Thank you, Mrs. Yupi, for the speech and officially open this webinar. The honorable ladies and gentlemen, now welcome to our main program, the scientific session, which will be built by our first moderator, Mrs. Hanifah Ahmad. Please welcome. This time is yours.
Thank you, MC, for the opportunity. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Hanifah Ahmad. I am Medical Lab Technology student of Polytechnic Health Ministry of Jakarta III, and I will be the moderator for the first topic on today's webinar. The world is currently impacted by the novel coronavirus disease or COVID-19. COVID-19 started in the city of Wuhan, Hubei province, China, and spread to all over the world rapidly. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization, WHO, declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic. We know that the diagnosis of COVID-19 is not possible without the laboratory services. Laboratory tests cannot be done by another healthcare professional except medical lab technologists. So, as the medical lab technologist, it is a solemn duty to know what lab testing methods that are used for COVID-19 diagnosis, how those methods develop, and how the role of medical lab technologists to face a new normal era in this current situation. Today, we will learn to understand what lab testing methods are used for COVID-19 diagnosis from Mr. Miswar Fattah as the first speaker. The topic is Update Laboratory Testing for Diagnostic COVID-19 from Medical Laboratory Technologies Perspective. But before that, I will read Mr. Miswar biography. Dr. Miswar Fattah, MSE, was born on June 6, 1978 at Makassar. Mr. Miswar educational background are graduated from SMA Kadepkes Makassar in 1997, graduated as Bachelor of Science in Chemistry at Universitas Hasanuddin in 2002, graduated as Master of Science in Clinical Chemistry at Universitas Hasanuddin in 2006, and he graduated as Doctor of Medicine at Universitas Hasanuddin in 2012. Mr. Miswar is currently a manager in specialty and research laboratory with Prodia Clinical Laboratory. His current positions in professional organizations are as the Vice President at the Patelki, member of Scientific and Educational Committee at the Indonesian Association for Clinical Chemistry, President at ASEAN Association of Clinical Laboratory Scientists, and corresponding member Scientific Committee of Asia Pacific Federation for Clinical Chemistry. And now, I would like to inform the participants, after the speaker session, there will be Q&A. If you have any question from the lecture given by Mr. Miswar, you can submit them on the link that will be shared in room chat by the host of this webinar. You can only submit the question during the presentation. I repeat, you can only submit the question during the presentation. With that, I ask that you give your full attention to Mr. Miswar. Now, without any further ado, let us start. Mr. Miswar, the time is yours.
Thank you very much for moderator for your introduction. Good morning, everyone. Uh, Good morning, everyone. Very lucky today because we can discuss about laboratory testing for diagnostic COVID-19. Thanks to Polytechnic Jakarta 3 to invite me to collaborate to this webinar, international webinar. Okay, I will discuss about the laboratory testing for COVID diagnosis 19 and medical laboratory technologies perspective. First, I will discuss, this is our outline. We will discuss about what the COVID-19, the structures of the COVID-19, because this is very important to us. If we want to detect something infectious agent, we need to know what the infectious agent, what the SARS-CoV-2. So we need to discuss about and how to diagnose this disease. And the second, we'll discuss about nucleic acid tests because this is a gold standard for nucleic acid for COVID-19 diagnosis. And we will discuss about the antigen and antibody testing related COVID-19 and other testing related COVID-19 to support diagnosis or monitoring COVID-19 disease. Okay, this is a key event in outbreak of COVID-19. The first is after WHO alert us about a lot of different case in Wuhan. So WHO give alert to China's authorities, and after that, they know they suspect the human seafood is the source of the unique pneumonia. And 9th January 2020 is the first case, the patient death. And the most important as a laboratory area, because not long from 9 to 10 January, we already get the sequence of the virus. After we get the sequence of the virus, so all authority give the names for this disease as COVID-19. So the first name is, we know, 29 nCoV, new COVID. After they get the sequence, they know very different with SARS-CoV. So they give a new name with SARS-CoV-2. After that, in the 3 March 2020, the first case reported in Indonesia. And this is a current update in case in Indonesia. So more than 150,000 case in Indonesia and 6 patient death from this COVID-19. It's a lot of number of case. And if we look at the case, number of case increase. So not yet a flattening curve, but still increase the daily curve of the number of new cases in Indonesia. So if we look at Indonesia, now Indonesia is 9. Now Indonesia, if you look at this table, the 7th new case of death in Indonesia. So this still is very in Indonesia, and some countries increase this case too, like in India, in Mexico, USA, United States is still increased, and Brazil and Iran to increase this case too, because we look at the new death case is still increased, and this is a 10 number 10 is higher of new death of in the world. This is a main structure of coronavirus. First, this is RNA. This is very important to diagnose because every virus, they have unique RNA structure. So it's very important to detect based on RNA structure. And some protein important to us, like nuclear capsid. This is a protein for nuclear capsid here, nuclear capsid, because they have a round of the virus. And this is membrane protein. That's very important now to detect is both two spike protein, because this is how the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 can enter to the human. And envelope protein, some detection kits use this protein too. Okay, this is 7 CoV. We know the coronavirus, they have a 4 group: alpha coronavirus, beta coronavirus, virus, delta, and gamma. And this is a group SARS-CoV-2 in beta coronavirus. We know 7 coronavirus in beta is can cause of the, sorry, because a lot of we need. Okay, this is 10 of Sarana. Someone, they want to take over my slide, sorry. Okay, this is 10 of coronavirus, and 3 very infectious. We know this is a SARS-CoV first in 2023, and MERS-CoV in, and now we more higher burden in SARS-CoV-2. And we know the etiology of the SARS-CoV is come from bat, and after that with pangolins as a recombinant between virus from bat and pangolins. They recombinant and can become infectious to human. And after we get a sequence of SARS-CoV, ICTV CSG already get a name for the virus. They gave name of SARS-CoV-2, and WHO naming for the disease. Naming for the disease, the name is coronavirus disease 2019 as a COVID-19. So the two authority this give the name of the disease and the virus. And the very important to stop the outbreak is to control outbreak. We need to more faster to detect the disease. If we if we test not very fast to detect the disease, so we can get the naturally occur of disease. So if we can more faster to detect, so we can reduce the potential case. We can prevent more case. So very important to detect and very early to detect the SARS-CoV in the patient and early reporting, and so we can make us control the outbreak. And we know the viral load is during infection. After infection, 10 days before infection, and after 10 days, the symptoms can be onset. Some patient can 5 days, but mostly patient 10 days can give the onset. And after that, the viral load can increase. So this is time window is better for detection RNA base. After that, we need to another test to get to another test, because here we can get a false negative test. So we can discuss about the what laboratory testing available for COVID-19. This is raising how to develop COVID-19 test. First, HA tissue after we get a pathology, so the clinician know that this is a pneumonia case. And after electron microscopy, they look at the virus, or the virus structure is similar with a corona virus. This is a group of coronavirus. After that, they culture. After culture, they look doing a next generation sequencing to sequence whole genome of the virus. After that, after we get the sequence, so we can develop a test for PCR. So PCR test arise after that, and we can isolate the virus. We can develop a specific antibody. We can develop test for ELISA, and we can develop a lateral flow, and we develop ECLIA, and now mostly the reagent producent try to produce a neutralization assay antibody testing. And molecular testing, what we can test of the virus. Some tests we can uh, measure. First, the part of the RNA, we can test the RNA. And the second, we can test about the antigen, some antigen, spike protein and nucleocapsid protein. We can test based on antigen base. And we can detect antibody. Antibody, we have two antibody type, IgM, IgG, and include IgA is common to test of antibody testing. And the neutralization assay we can do for to know the antibody capacity, they can neutralize the virus or not. And we can do to culture cell culture too, but maybe this is not common in Indonesia or Asia for diagnostic, only mostly for research doing cell culture, because we need a higher level of the BSL laboratory, BSL3, we need to that. And we need three type method: nucleic acid testing if we're doing RNA, and we need to ELISA or rapid test of lateral flow to detect the antigen. To detect the antibody we test, we can use lateral flow ELISA too. So this is three type of tests: antibody, antigen, and RNA SARS-CoV-2. We can use for this immunoassay base, this for using a molecular assay. And this is a different type test we can do related to COVID-19. First, RNA of the virus. We can use target for ORF A or B, and N gene, E gene, S gene as a target. Part of this is very important target is RDRP. RDRP is very important. And we for antigen, for N protein, S protein, this is technology we can use to detect this. Antibody, we can test for IgM, IgG, and IgA. We can use this, ELISA, immunochromatography, or chemiluminescence, clear. And we can detect host response. Patient can respond the infection. We can test or CBC, complete blood count, CRP, D-dimer, LDH, and this is method we can use. This is time onset related of the test. The first test is very more sensitive, is real-time PCR, because we look at this is a viral load. The blue line is viral load. So we can detect 5 days before the symptoms. Before the symptoms onset, we can test 5 days before. We can test around 3 days before onset, because this is a real-time PCR threshold. This is serological test onset. If you look at this at the day 3 minus day 3, we can test the viral load of the viral, so they can detect more early before symptoms. But for IgM, this is IgM yellow. Yeah, yellow is after mostly 5 days after symptom we can test IgM, but some test the optimum is the 14 days to peak of the IgM. And IgG is actually not much different with IgM. They can around 7 days, and the peak around similar 14 days and to 16 days, the peak of the IgG. And after they can more longer. Yeah. So the sensitivity can increase after day 10 to 15, especially for IgG, antibody testing. And because we know this is a pandemic situation, they have different phase of the pandemic. So we different technology we can use to test, because if early phase, mostly predominantly animal infection, a few human infection, the phase 1 to 3, phase 4 sustained human to human transmission. This is in the first in December 2019, and pandemic phase is still from January to now, still phase of pandemic. Some country is they now lower uh, after that post peak and post pandemic. We look at this as technology we can use. For the first phase, we need to NGS because we need to know the sequence. This is new virus or all virus. Uh, After that, we can do a PCR, similar what I informed before about the racing for COVID-19 testing. And this is some strategy approach to some approach we can do for COVID-19 testing. First is we can detect RNA base. Yeah. We can detect RNA base. We can detect with NGS, real-time PCR, or LAM. And as alternative, we can test antigen. Antigen base is actually similar concept with RNA base because this is for they detect the virus. We can detect using ELISA or ECLIA, yeah, or we can use lateral flow. Yeah, lateral flow. For alternative, for antibody, we can use using a POCT paper-based device of a biosensor. And some technology for diagnosis COVID-19 is imaging, but the gold standard is a real-time PCR now. This is similar information. The SARS-CoV testing, the virus, we can detect two types from swab, sample from swab. The sample from swab we can test with PCR base or antigen base. Yeah, antigen base or RNA base. For antibody, we can detect with lateral flow or ELISA or ECLIA. And this is a position of the test. For diagnosis, we want to know this patient is they have the disease or not. So we need to using real-time PCR. To contact tracing the people of or family around this patient, we can do with a real-time PCR or immunoassay base. We can do with antibody testing or antigen testing to tracing the contact. But for community case, we can, because we're broader, if we doing with real-time PCR for all these patients, so the cost is very high. So we need to more affordable technology to detect the virus. We can use a immunoassay base, yeah, or real-time PCR if we need, especially if they have a positive result. So laboratory related outbreak, we have two sites. First, for patient management, mostly this is for hospital base. And second, for epidemiology and control outbreak. So we want to know the patient need to stay at home or not. This is very important too. So laboratory now not only focus for patient management, because in not pandemic case, mostly laboratory medicine focus on patient management perspective. But after pandemic, in pandemic era, so the epidemiology and control outbreak, this is very important role of laboratory medicine too. And we know the IFCC, International Federation Clinical Chemistry, they released their guideline for diagnosis in we need using real-time PCR. For antibody, we can use for epidemiology or surveillance. So the position is different. And for staging, we can need another biochemical monitoring. Yeah, we can discuss in 4 sessions, and for after recovery, we can use antibody to epidemiology surveillance. So this is get information from American Society for Microbiology. Nucleoside testing is for now the current infection. For antibody detection only for past exposure. So not to know you infected now or not, but for past infection, past exposure. So the etiology to diagnose COVID-19, first we need to take sample from upper respiratory specimen, especially for nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swab. And for the technology to detect, we need to real-time PCR base. And this is sample type we can detect. First, for upper airway specimen, because this is more easy to doing screening for our patient. Yeah, we can do this nasopharyngeal, nasal swab, or nasopharyngeal secretion. And lower airway specimen, we can use sputum airway secretion because this is more higher sensitivity compared with this, but this is not easy to get sample because not all patients they have this, not easy to get this. We need to hospital based to take this. And other we can use for blood, fecal, urine, and conjunction secretion. This is sensitivity of the sample type. If we take sample from lower uh, respiratory, like from bowel sample, sputum is higher comparable with nasal and pharyngeal swab. So we focus on nucleic acid testing related COVID test now. First, this is PCR-based test. I think we know and we understand about how the PCR because it's very common test now. We need to uh, template, so we need to extract the RNA and we need a primer to detect specific target of the uh, uh, SARS-CoV. After that, we're doing denaturation to denaturate to separate the RNA. But before this reverse transcriptase, we convert from RNA to cDNA because the COVID-19 SARS-CoV is a RNA virus. So we convert to cDNA. After that, we denaturate. After we denaturate, we annealing to attach the primer, and after that for the probe will attach to, and we extend. After extension, they they're doing amplification and the probe release and the color fluorescence can release, and we can look monitor the graph based on the cycle and fluorescence. We so we can get the CT of the test. So this is different target of each country. You look here, they have different target. This is ORF1A, ORF1B. This is non-structural protein. This is more short. This is structural protein for S gene, N gene, M gene, E gene, and N gene. And some country develop the test. They have different target. Like uh, China CDC. China CDC developed here. So ORF1A and OR1B between, so they get both target. And for Germany, they do with 2 to 3 target. First, we in RDRP. So mostly first WHO recommended this, and one in engine and engine for Germany. So like some region like Rose use this. And from Thailand and mostly CDC, USA, United States using engine. But they have different target in engine. Even they name engine, but they have the different region to detect. Mostly region now very different target to measure SARS-CoV-2. But WHO recommended this is positioning e-gene as only for first line screening because they have similarity with SARS-CoV coronavirus. And for confirmatory, we can use RDRP gene or ORF1AB. And additional confirmatory, we can use engine because this can specific to SARS-CoV SARS-CoV-2. And IFCC information a guideline, they have released guideline about for diagnosis SARS-CoV, especially in area nouns, is area pandemic like Indonesia, we need only single discrimination. So we need only one target, like RDRP engine is enough, not not need to detect a lot of target, only one specific target to diagnose as SARS-CoV COVID-19. For area no noun, especially for new case in first time in case Indonesia or in Mars area, so we need to detect two targets. But now we only need one target, especially in pandemic area. A lot of kit now available in the world. You can find in the this is a fine website. They already collect a lot of kit in the world for this. And we look at this is some kit, they have different target too. Like Abbott Molecular, they use RDRP engine. Cepheid, we know this is in Indonesia, they use actually TCM as Cepheid. A gene expert, they use ORF1 and E-gene. Yeah. And Roche Molecular, they use ORF1 and E-gene. And Feredus, they use ORF and N-gene. They have different targets. This is for open system. A lot of like here, Perkin Elmer, they use ORF1 and N-gene. And like for C-gene, they use 3 targets for RDRP, E-gene, and N-gene. So different kits, they have different target. But based on guideline, we need only one, especially for this, ORF1, ORF1AB, RDRP, N-gene. This is specific to diagnose SARS-CoV-2. And this is another example. A lot of point of care diagnostic for SARS-CoV-2, some like gene expert, ID now from Abbott, Vita PCR from Credo, PAPI Prep from Microsense DX. This is very simple because we need around 1 hour to get the results and no need extraction. This is example the how we can do point of care POCT of molecular testing for SARS-CoV-2. And they have different CT value between kits. Yeah? This is very important. Not all kit is same because some kits they have different target, and because they have different targets, so they can have to and they have different technology, so they can have different CT value. So the cut off for positivity rate can different, not only similar for 40 CT. So now we can discuss about antigen and antibody testing. For antigen, this is a part very important of SARS-CoV-2. Two main protein very important, S protein and N protein. So from these two protein, from S protein, we can divide can total protein S or only S subunit, or we can test S1, this is S2, this is S1, or we can develop specific because this is S target from human. RBD is a binding site of the human attach, so this is very important target to detect, and N-gene antigen. So from this antigen, we can develop antibody to test antibody specific for this, antibody specific for this. We can develop antibody based on S protein, RBD protein, N protein to develop the test. So this is how antibody can develop after infection of SARS-CoV. Host cells, they infected, so the macrophage will presenting the antigen. They select with specific antigen. The antigens can broad, can E protein, N protein, S protein, or S1 protein, S2 protein. So a lot of antigen they can present, and after that they can develop antibody. So actually for SARS-CoV we have a lot of type of antibody. So but we need to test more important only protein S and protein N is very high specific to SARS-CoV-2. And we can detect for neutralization how to neutralize virus so they cannot infect again. For POCT, we have three tests for antibody testing. First, POCT base. This is for specific for IgG, IgM. This is very simple. We can take a sample from blood, serum, sample, plasma or saliva, or lab-based testing like for ELISA or ECLEA. And neutralization antibody testing we can use for ELISA because we need this pseudovirus to doing this test. For lateral flow based antibody, we look at lateral flow based is more very easy to doing. This is sample pad, this is conjugate, so we put reagent here. This is a line pad for IgG, IgM, and this is for control. So if they have a positive IgM, only they have two band here. If they have a result IgG, we can look at two band in IgG. And if they have positive IgG and IgM, we have a three bands. This is different comparison of between rapid serology, ELISA, and this is ELISA or ECLEA. This is for the real-time PCR. Result output for this is very faster, include these two. And this we need time because we need to extract and amplification. Even POCT, we need 1 hour to detect here. But this is high accuracy, high sensitivity, so the real-time PCR is still gold standard. And if we compare which better lateral flow or ELISA or ECLEA, ECLEA is more better because for lateral flow, they have result only positive or negative, qualitative, but for ELISA or ECLEA, actually we can know the titer actually. So we, because some disease maybe future we know that the titer related to the neutralization potentiability. For lateral flow, because mostly this test available, we know the sensitivity, specificity agree with ELISA is only 75 and 85%. And the cutoff very important because not easy to read. Some kit is very low band. So this is some guideline for weekend. Actually, even very smear, we look at this. Depend of the kit insert, but the common guideline is all test visible band were considered positive. And this is some serological tests available in the world. And for immunoassay, we already some kits they have different target. Like for Abbott, they use N protein, IgG, diazorin, use S1, S2 spike protein, IgG, and some IgN, AGA, AGM, IgG. They have a total antibody like a ROS. They measure total. It's mean IgG, IgM, and maybe IgA, but they're not included in the insert. And Siemens S1 RBP domain total antibody too. So some kits they have different target. And for the third type of test, antibody testing in neutralization test, this is a type of neutralization test to know the how much the titer antibody, how much the antibody can neutralize the something. We need to show the virus to doing this. And we need to, if we look at here, the symptom, onset of symptom, it correlate with the level of IgG. This is ELISA-based test. IgM, IgG is most faster, but for IgG, for longer is good for using for IgG. This is, we look at based on correlate with symptom. And we look here is for PCR testing. PCR testing, day by day, can the lower of the positivity rate. After that, we can utilize for this IgG and IgM. So the combination of IgG and IgM and PCR is very important because we can increase the positivity detection rates like this from 51.9 to 98 percentage or to the detection rates. But some still question about the antibody testing. This is some question. We need to neutralize antibody and other. And now we can discuss about other testing related COVID-19. This is some tests to monitor like a CBC because white blood cell increase, neutrophil count is increased, lymphocyte count is reduced, and decrease a platelet count. This is very important because I think all lab can do this test. And albumin decrease, LDH increase, alanine aminotransferase and aspartate aminotransferase can increase to the some test is increased, especially if they have multi-organ damage, so all of the tests can increase. But this is very specific. Very important test is like very simple, like LDH, and this test erythromet sedimentation rate is can up to 85%, and this is more higher is CRP is very important to detect the increase of even this test. Not all this test is not specific actually. It's similar, and this is test not for other aside for antibody or antigen. You can choose this test for systemic inflammation. We can use this ferritin, CRP, ESR. Because related to the coagulation, we can choose a prothrombin test, D dimer and tryptophan again. So a lot of tests we can do for this. So to close this presentation, I will compare current diagnosis method available: NGS, real-time PCR, LAM, serological, rapid, and scan, CT scans, imaging actually, but and virus isolation. For diagnosis, we can use this as a gold standard RT-PCR LAM test, but this is higher cost and needs this complex. So as medical technology, we need to learn about how to do PCR testing. And this is, I will compare this very good comparison. For detection infection status, we can use this NGS, PCR, RNA virus CRISPR. Serological can detect infection status. For immunity status, we can use antibody. For accuracy, this is high accuracy. This is more lower accuracy because this immunoassay base they have a cross reactivity. For rapid testing, we can do this. This is cannot rapid. It's very difficult to rapid. User friendly because medical technology this very uses. Is why home testing can do. Some patient can do this test because very easy. But this need for laboratory testing. And affordability, the cost. This is high cost. Point of care. This is potential high point of care. Sample preparation. This we need to sample preparation. This can all using whole blood. And cross reactivity, this very specific, why accuracy very high. And airway swab, we can use this we can use blood. Yeah. And if we compare the quality, the quality antibody is some test is not very good, depend of the time onset too, because we look here, some sensitivity very lower, some sample sensitivity and specificity is very lower. It's not good. If molecular testing, we look at this very good result. Only some all specificity is higher, more than 19%. Compared with antigen, actually similar result with molecular, but they have some sample, some test sensitivity is lower comparable to molecular testing. So what new trends? Now saliva sample is a new trend for to detect SARS-CoV-2 because easy to take the samples. We can use with ELISA or POC testing too. We can do this test. Yes, and some study they have comparable with saliva testing. You compare with oropharyngeal saliva. They have 87% and 91%. And some using rolling sample 100% is they have a similarity with PCR-based testing. And I hope all of this presentation can encourage all in the laboratory medicines. We have a super load now. We have superhero now in the lab because we can help patients to detect they have COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 infection or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miswa. That was a very informative lecture you presented. So we have several minutes for Q&A. There are questions coming in, but due to the limited time, the committee has selected just few questions to be asked to you. And now I will read them for you. For the first questions is from Junildo de Jesus Jimenez from Timor-Leste. He wants to ask that related to the situation of COVID-19 pandemic. The question is, will the COVID-19 disappear one day or it will be with us forever?
Okay, this is very good question. This pandemic is long term or only or few time. If you look at the the virulence of the virus, the viral SARS-CoV is very easy to transfer, and not only in related to the seasons. So its potential it will be long term. After this pandemic is reduced, they still uh, there are in the world. So but maybe the volume is not so higher like this, but this will like they come and lower this become the lower the frequency of the disease of this disease. Yeah, thank you.
From Robiatil Aulia in Indonesia. The question is, how do we optimize the process of updating diagnostic laboratory testing during the COVID-19 period to keep it running well?
Okay, if we want to validate it the first time, if we want to uh, make sure the quality of the test, so we need to first validate it. So if we want to validate it, we make sure first time we need to choose the best target antigen or antibody, or if we utilize in our lab. For validated this test, we need to follow the guideline. Some guideline available to validate of this test to maintain the quality from CLSI and for FDA and from American Society of Microbiology. They have guideline to validate of the test. They can follow this to validate this test.
I will read the last question is from Ari in Indonesia. The question is, what are things that cause a false positive or negative on PCR result? So in his place, there is a positive swab test result. Then repeated 2 hours later, it comes negative. It is false negative, which result can be accounted for because the person is OTG or the person without symptoms. Be, how do you respond to the case? Yeah, because of the effect of this, our office must lock down for 14 days according to applicable regulation. Maybe the question is, what are things that cause a false positive or negative PCR result?
Okay, thank you. A very nice question because it's very interesting. A lot of question about this if I discuss about real-time PCR. If we doing test 2 times, first positive, after that we test again in another time negative, or sometimes first time negative and another test is positive. So which test we can reliable for us? This is positive or negative? Which false positive or false negative? It's a very good question because um, first, very important, we need to know the some technology they have different targets, and some technology they have different sensitivity and sensitivity. So we need to discuss actually with the lab. If the first lab is they have a higher sensitivity, so the possible the second test not false negative, but maybe in lower detection limit of the second test, or sometimes because its sampling is very important, because pre-analytical errors is very high in COVID-19. A lot of uh, sampling is very new for nasopharyngeal samples. It's not all because this new pandemic, a lot of uh, medical technologies to take the sample is very new. So sometimes there's error in the take samples. So mostly, if we know the first case is they have higher sensitivity and specificity, so I more pretend to this is the second test is false negative, because if we get this result, if we get even if we doing it in same sample we doing in same time with different technology, one positive, one negative, we take the positive. This is the common rule now to reduce to eliminate the border of the pandemic. Thank you.
I think that's all, Mr. Miswar. So thank you, Mr. Miswar, for very thorough in giving the answer to the questions.
Thank you.
Now, I give back to the MC.
Thank you, Dr. Miswar, for an outstanding session, and Ms. Hanifa Ahmad for bringing the first session very delightful. Now we are moving on to the next session that will be guided by our second moderator. Please welcome Mr. Aldi Adwitya Walio. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mulasari. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Aldi Adwitya Walio. I'm a medical laboratory technology student on Health Polytechnic Jakarta 3, and I will be the moderator for the second and third speaker. The COVID-19 has been sweeping the world for about 6 months. We as a human must be able to adapt during this pandemic. TLM must be sufficiently prepared to face the new normal phase. How the readiness of medical laboratory technologies expert and how to face the new normal will be fully explained by Mr. Heru, with the main topic of face a new normal with the proper mitigation in the field of medical laboratory technology. Before of that, I will read Mr. Heru's biography. Mr. Heru Setiawan, SKMM Biomed. He was graduated from Akademi Analis Kesehatan Bandung and graduated Bachelor of Public Health at University of Indonesia, graduated as a master degree of Biomedical Science at University of Indonesia. Mr. Heru is currently a lecturer on Health Polytechnic Jakarta 3 and now taking a PhD on State University of Jakarta. He also have the organizational experience. First of all, member of DPP Paltelki Department of Education 2010 to 2014, and head of DPP Paltelki Department of Education 2014 to 2017. Now, without further ado, let us start, Mr. Heru. The time is yours.
Okay. Thank you to Aldi as the moderator for my time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Greetings to all of us. I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Yupi Supatini as the Director of the Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 and the entire committee from Medical Laboratory Technology student of Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 for trusting me to be one of the speakers at this GENOME event. Yeah, GENOME is the abbreviation from Genius, Empower, and Original MATLAB Tech Extraordinary. Okay, this indeed extraordinary situation. How are you all? I hope everything is all right, and I hope the material that I will bring can be useful for all of us. At this time, I will discuss face a new normal with proper mitigation in the field of medical laboratory technology. Because discussing further, I will update the latest news regarding the development of COVID-19 in Indonesia. Let's take the presentation. Yeah, COVID-19 in Indonesia, last update on August 18, 2020. There's total 1,043 and 43 cases and 6,277 deaths and 96,306 recoveries. But Mr. Miswar Fattah has just updated with his presentation before that there's increased cases 150,489 recoveries, okay, and 6,277 deaths. Yeah. There's increased case in this case. Okay, next. Regional risk criteria based on four color. Yeah, red is for high risk, uncontrolled spread of the virus, such as in hospitals, areas near hospital, or areas with positive cases. Orange for medium risk, the risk of spreading is quite high, and the potential for the virus to get out of the control. Yellow for low risk, deployment control and still possible transmission, and green color not affected. There's a risk of spreading the virus, but there are no cases. Next. Okay, for the red zone, red color. It's closed school, places or worship and business, limit non-essential travel, lockdown or quarantine for communities that have been infected with the virus. Track and quarantine who has been in contact with positive cases. Provide spirit facilities for infectious cases from other services. And orange zone, next, orange zone, countries or territories adjacent to the red zone implement health protocol. Postponing or canceling meeting is not important. And get tested for everyone with symptoms of COVID-19. Next, for yellow zone, countries with local transmission implement health protocol, avoid unnecessary meetings. And the green zone, countries or region where there are no confirmed cases, avoid unnecessary meeting and stick to health protocol. Okay. Okay, this photo shows the situation at the airport when the passenger is stand in line and keep the distance at least 1 meter. Next. Droplet transmission, contact, and airborne. Okay. If we cough or sneeze, there's a difference in distance. Yeah. Cough, this is 10 minutes per second. Sneeze is 50 minutes per second, and sneeze exhalation is dropped with 1.5 meters. Yeah. Sneeze is the long display droplet. Yeah, is because the droplet is more than 1 millimeter. And this transmission can directly with airborne, droplet, direct contact, and indirect contact. Next. There are the stages of infectious droplet and droplet nuclei. First, large infection droplet. Mucus or water, in case viruses are aerosolized by the infector or by toilet water, quickly fall to the ground after traveling up to 1 to 3 feet. Second, small infection droplet, mucus or water coatings start to evaporate, fall to ground after traveling 3 to 5 feet, and can become droplet nuclei. Third, infectious droplet nuclei. Droplet size has decreased to less than 5 micron, can float in the air or prolonged periods due to microscopic size. Next. This aerosol generating procedure, yeah. Respiratory aerosol, tracheal intubation, extubation, and related procedure. Non-invasive ventilation, tracheostomy in front and neck airway, face mask ventilation, all form of positive pressure ventilation of the airway, open tracheal sectioning, bronchoscopy and bronchoalveolar lavage, induction of sputum, high-low nasal oxygen, certain dental during procedure, chest compression and or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and for blood or tissue fluid aerosol, surgery procedure in which high-speed devices are used. Next. New normal. Okay. This reflection, adaptation to new habits is how we change our behavioral lifestyle and habits. Situation where when large-scale social restrictions begin to be relaxed, health protocol were still in place so that we could remain productive while still preventing contracting COVID-19 until a definitive vaccine with international standard was found. Okay. On the background, COVID-19 has succeeded in changing daily habits at home, school, campus, work, on the road, even anywhere. Humans are helpless because the steps are limited by the presence of COVID-19, so that they become unproductive and have an impact of the economic problems of families, communities, regions, and the state. For most people, new normal is also synonymous with opening public facilities or spaces, office, industries, schools. New normal still applies certain health protocols and restrictions implemented so that people can adapt and be activists. Next. Alert and alertness is needed from the start of the second wave of COVID-19 spread. Collaboration and synergy from stakeholders to formulate and determine the most appropriate policies in the adaptation phase of new habits. Doctor, other health practitioner, nurse play a very important role in both effort to deal with COVID-19, especially in encouraging people to have a new culture of cleaner living. The need of itself is for people to remain productive and safe from COVID-19 during a pandemic, emphasizes the readiness of individuals and communities for activities outside the home, even though the SARS-CoV-2 virus has not disappeared. Knowing how individuals and society behave in public spaces. Next. That has two benefits to advantages. The health protocol will protect Indonesia from the threat of sustainable pandemic, supporting the sustainability of the country from various sides and preventing new problems. COVID-19 prevention, we must break the chain of transmission. Yeah? Here can we see that is transmission from agent reservoir, portal of exit, and portal entry and host. Yeah? So the transmission must be break. Okay. The transmission for infection agent can transfer in the water on the portal of access for sneeze or cough, transmission with inhalation and portal the entry. The virus can direct to the lungs, and susceptible host is, for instance, is baby or elderly. Next. Pretty simple to do. Implement health protocol. Wear mask. Social distancing. Wash your hair often. Applying a clean, healthy lifestyle. The types of mask and usage. Mask N95 able to filter particle up to 95% in operating room, medical action room, ICU, laboratory, emergency room, and polyclinic. Mask for surgery able to filter particle up to 70% for registration and waiting room. Pita mask able to filter particle up to 20% daily use. It is difficult to find mask, handkerchief or towel can be used. What is new normal? Always use mask when out of the home or outside, we must wear the mask. Next. Okay, this is for the example of types of mask, yeah, surgical mask, paper mask, and 90 mask, and Vita mask, and facial mask. Yeah. We discussed it before. Okay, next. Number two, social and physical distancing. In the family environment, if there are families working in the region, such as a COVID-19 referral hospital, work environment, if it's close to COVID referral hospital, and public places, places of worship, markets, roads, malls, stations, and restaurants. Okay. Okay, stop people who are not wearing masks. Yeah. Used to the wearing mask. Okay, next. Okay, if we are in the elevator, limit to the number of people in the elevator and not facing out. Okay, and not talking. Okay, and the normal is simple. Is if you meet someone, do not shake your hand first. Yeah, just say hello. Okay, and keep distance 1 meter at least. Next. Okay, the new normal is simple. When you in the market, keep your distance at least 1 meter. And next. Okay, the new normal is protect the parents, protect other people. Okay. Next, number three, washing hands. Wash hand using soap and running water according to WHO guidelines. Wash your hand using a hand sanitizer. It's optional. If you often handle objects, you can wear gloves. It's a hand hygiene. Yeah. The main thing is a pillar in the IPC. The main component of patient safety. Simple and effective way to prevent infection from germ or microbes, creating a safe environment, creating safe health service. If hands are dirty, wash them with antiseptic soap and running water or hand wash. If your hands are not visibly dirty, clean them with alcohol-based liquid or hand rub. Okay. Okay. Wash hand with soap with the way like this show, yeah. Okay. At least the for 40 to 60 seconds. Next. What is new normal? Normal is simple, just provide and hand sanitizer everywhere. Yeah, nice. Okay, the new normal is wash your hand frequently. Yeah. Okay. And number four, next. Cultivate and clean and healthy life. Hygiene and personal care. Immediately take a shower when returning home. Take care of health and increase immunity. Eat nutrition food and drink lots of water. Apply adequate cough and sneeze wherever you are. Exercising. Taking supplement or immune boosting vitamins. If you are sick, you should not go to the office, and enough the rest. Okay. What is the new normal? The new normal is simple. Just immediately take a shower when you are home. Okay. And cover cut and sneeze with disposable tissue and discard tissue after use. And if there is no tissue, use a sleeve. Okay. Next. What is the new normal? New normal is simple. If you have the flu, you can not go to the office. Okay. Okay. Number five. Avoid crowds anywhere. No crowding more than 5 people. maintain a distance from one person to another. Just leave the house if you have urgent matters and always wear a mask. Okay, these the active place that have a risk to spread the COVID-19 in the new normal. There are 9 levels. Level 1, when you buy or bring food from the restaurant, playing tennis, and level 2, if you walk, run, bike together, and if you fill the fuel, okay. And level 3, when you go to the shopping, camping, hotel, and play golf and museum. And level 4, the dentist, walk in the crowd and office and the waiting room in doctor and restaurant. And level 5, when you have the party in room and plan. Level 6, in the casino, restaurant, and garden, sound. And level 7 is basket and the pool. Level 8 is stadium, yeah, from the gym and worship, yeah. Okay. And level 9 is impact. Okay, this is the place that can be reached to be spread COVID-19 in the new normal. Next. What is the new normal? New normal is the simple. When we are in the office, keep the distance, okay? At least 1 meter. And the new normal is simple too. When shopping time, keep your distance, and when you're in the public transportation, keep your distance. And next, next, do not forget to wear mask. Keep your distance. Washing your hand with soap. Use electric money, and keep your distance in public transportation. Ensure the readiness of each region. The readiness of each region can be calculated through data and facts from the field and determine the priority for opening each sector. Central and local government must pay attention to priorities before opening a sector of activity. Involve all elements of society, both central and local government, down to the level neighborhood association and citizen association. Perform regular evaluations. It is carried out when new cases are found or when cases decrease in areas that implement in the new habit adaptation. New normal criteria according to WHO, from isolation of all suspected and confirmed cases, clinical case suitable for those affected by COVID-19, contact tracing and quarantine of all contacts. At least 80% of new cases are traces and contact quarantine within 72 hours of confirmation. At least 80% of new cases contact were monitored for 14 days. Ensure that people wash their hands frequently, wearing masks in public places and workplaces, as well as maintaining a physical distance of at least 1 meter from the others. New normal indicator, no increase in transmission, using a basic reproduction number calculated into consecutive weeks, value of I0 less than 1. Health system, how high the adaptation and capacity of the health system? Did most of them get service? Required value more than 60%. Surveillance by testing a person of or group of potential crowd or not. Another indicator, epidemiological indicators, number of deaths, number of cases in 2 weeks, public health indicator, quality and quantity of services for COVID testing must not decrease. Health service readiness indicator must be well prepared. Okay, this the obstacle, yeah, for the low social economy and the confused data, needs and demand of life, and what testing for COVID is still limited. Okay. Next, monitoring and evaluation. The success of controlling COVID is largely determined by discipline in implementing health protocols. Indicator monitoring must be carried out regularly. Don't be careless. Involve all elements in eradication of this pandemic. If an increase in new cases is found, we close again the region. The responsibility of the government and MFT to break the chain of spreading COVID-19. Next. Yeah, this presidential decree of the Republic of the Indonesia regarding to the determination of non-natural disaster for the spread of COVID-19 as a national disaster. Yeah. That in Jakarta, April 13, 2020. Next. Okay, COVID-19 explanation laboratory. Since the time of the pandemic, COVID-19 was determined in the March 16, 2020 by government. First, about the labs network for COVID-19 is only 12 labs, and the March 19, 2020 increased to 34 labs, and March 26, 2020 is increased to be 4 university labs. Okay, next. Laboratory settings. According to security number HK 21 234 2020 concerning the guidelines for examining the RT-PCR test SARS-CoV-2 April 7, 2020, and guideline for prevention and control of coronavirus disease COVID-19 for edition published by the Indonesian Ministry of Health Directorate General or Disease Prevention and Control of P2P. This is of warning the spread of COVID-19, where participants active in effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19 according to the protocol, keep conducive atmosphere, increase endurance, and PHBS is clean and healthy lifestyle, yeah? And get enough rest, attend training and request a clinical assignment letter during a pandemic, and advocating for health facilities, adequate PPE, standardized and nutritional. Okay, this is a letter to the Ministry of Health from DPP Patelki, or the Indonesia Association of Medical Laboratory Technologies, that we ask for guarantee application MLT safety and health. Next. Application for warranty for MLT proposed to Minister of Health, provincial or district or city health office, the head of the healthcare facilities. This is availability of PPE in accordance with COVID handling standard 9, and additional nutritional supplement adequate test, technical training and letter, clinical assignment, providing special allowance and incentive. Next. This MLT exists and contributes directly during the COVID-19 pandemic that is organized by the paper fatal key. Okay, this is a reward for member of fatal key that they issue for MLT on duty during pandemic COVID-19. Yeah, training credit unit. Yeah, we have 3 TCU for or to be get involved on the duty during pandemic COVID-19. Next. This is from information on COVID-19 checking lab and distributor, the coronavirus resources for labs, laboratory COVID-19 for internet only, yeah, the institution and the address and for internet only. Yeah. Okay, next. Recruitment of volunteers. The paper fatal key is send a letter to head of Badan PPSDM with number letter DG 1120490/2020 in March 30, 2020. Okay. Next. Socialization and promotive effort. The fatal key is held the webinar fatal key to socialize about COVID-19. Next. Next slide. And this is donation collection where the paper fatal key is get along to set aside some of your fortune or fund to help the victim of COVID-19. And one fatal key combat COVID-19 is internet explanation, policy advocacy, and keep serving professional and sincerely. Next. This is professional services to MLT, blood sampling for COVID-19 patients, and then handling of COVID-19 specimen, delivery of COVID-19 specimen, choosing COVID-19 reagent, validation according to emergency protocol, rapid antibody COVID-19 screening, real-time PCR COVID-19 examination, strengthening in the quality of COVID-19 examination, reporting the result of COVID-19, and post-examination sample management. So, when pandemic hit Indonesia, what can we dedicate? This is for the DPP fatal key to aim to have the professional services. Okay, next. Okay, this is MLT against the COVID-19. They're wearing the hazmat, okay? And they got appreciated from Dr. Ahmad Yuryanto as a government spokesperson. And next. This is blood sampling for COVID-19 patient, sampling using standard COVID-19 personal protection equipment. So the phlebotomist must wear the PPE or hazmat to protect himself when they taking the blood. Okay, next. Okay, this is the photo of MLT or fatal key action in the field. Okay, next. Yeah, this blood sampling in people's home. So we come to people's home to take the specimen and test the rapid COVID-19. Yeah, still wearing PPA. Okay. Next, this sampling booth, if we are going to take a nasopharyngeal swab with a box sampling booth again. Next, this is the delivery of specimen to the laboratory with the ice box to keep the specimen is valid to be tested. Yeah. And next, role and MLT against COVID-19. First, blood sampling for COVID-19 patient. Some were trained to do nasopharyngeal swab sampling, handles for COVID-19 specimen, delivery of COVID-19 specimen, examination both in the lab and outside the lab related to COVID-19, selecting related reagents COVID-19 in the laboratory. And rapid antibody COVID-19 screening, rapid test assistant with various type of rapid makes MLT very active in examining SARS-CoV-2 antibody. Okay, next. Yeah, this MLT against COVID-19 in Indonesia. Yeah, still working hard in the field. And the last slide. Okay, get used to the unusual new normal with new man. Okay, thank you for the attention. And it's time to the moderator again.
Okay, thank you for Mr. Heru. That was a very informative lecture. So now we have several minutes for the Q&A. And there are questions coming in, but due to limited time, the committee have selected just a few questions to be asked. The first question, Mr. Heru, from Anissa Latifa from Indonesia. What are health workers to do if they want to take action on patients that have no symptom of COVID-19?
Okay, thank you for Anifah Latifah for the question. So the question is, what health workers need to pay attention to when taking action on patients who do not have symptoms of COVID-19? Okay, let's say we must still assume that the patient is wherever if they have not symptom, but still we have to prepare, yeah, to prepare, and we must stick the protocol of health and to take care of ourselves. Yeah, so we use the mask and we use the PPA. So we still take the health protocol. Okay.
So we have to follow the health protocol.
Yeah.
So the next question, for the second question from Sana from India. Can COVID-19 virus spread through the water if we share the beach or pool with COVID positive men who spit in the water? Like in some areas.
Okay. Sana from India, thank you for your question. Your question is, can COVID-19 spread through water if I said the beach or pool with a COVID positive man in the water? That, as we know, that first COVID-19 is the specimen is taken from nasopharyngeal and the saliva. Yeah? The simple specimen is from saliva. So to protect the we say in the presentation, we must avoid the pool, right? So I think if the virus is taken from the swab and the saliva, I think is there is in spread COVID-19 in the pool, okay? Because the virus is the cell in there, yeah, in saliva or in the swab. Okay, I think it's high risk, yeah, high risk to with uh, activities in the pool.
Okay.
Okay.
For the third question from Nandadia from Indonesia,
Yeah.
there are many people who make their own hand sanitizer to wash their hand. Is it actually allowed, or we have to buy the hand sanitizer from with the trusted brand? And what do you think?
Okay, Nanda, thank you for your question too. Currently, there are many people who initiative to make their own hand sanitizer to wash their hand. Is it actually allowed, or we only allowed to buy hand sanitizer brand? Okay, I think to make the hand sanitizer by himself, I think it's allowed, as long as the formula is at least there are alcohol, okay, or ethanol. That is for disinfection. Okay, that is allowed. Yeah. Maybe to make it more economized. Yeah, I think it's allowed. Yeah, as long as the formula is correct. Yeah, the minimum concentration is 65% to 80%. Okay.
For the last question from Calvin from Philippines, mention about the policy advocacy by one of Patalki against the COVID-19. Could you elaborate on this, and how are the decision makers and policy implementers responding on the advocacy?
Yes, we have the professional organization in Patalki. Yeah, we try to do that to uh, make decision maker and policy implement according our advocacy. Yeah, in the first where our member or the Patalki member face the obstacles and face the what you say in obstacles in the field. Yeah, I think with the fact and the we can advocate and make to government to this mechanism to the make the policy, yeah, the policy and implement according to our member in the field. Yeah, if there any case, yeah, any case in the field. Okay.
That is all. Thank you, Mr. Heru, for
okay, you're welcome from the question.
And let us move to our third speaker. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there were many developments in method of diagnosis, starting from the rapid test by measuring the IgG and IgM antibodies, with a more specific method with PCR, polymerase chain reaction, to determine the nitrogen-based composition of SARS-CoV-2 virus, and how the development diagnostic will be fully explained by Mr. Ruben, and with the main topic, development of diagnostic method of COVID-19. Before of that, I will read the Mr. Ruben curriculum vitae. Name Mr. Ruben Schnafke-Zinzius, nationality Germany, and now he's currently positioned on corporate position international management function in IVD and pharma companies. On 2002 to 2009, becoming the director chemicals and board member of Merck Indonesia. 1998 to 2002, division manager life science and chemical at Merck on Japan, and 1995 to 1998, division manager diagnostic at Merck Thailand. and he was graduated by diploma in biochemistry on 1988 on Heidelberg and taking PhD in natural science on 1992 of University of Heidelberg. Now, without further ado, let us start. Mr. Ruben, the time is yours.
Good morning, or hello to all the participants. Is the tone clear? And my slide is shared? Slide is shared with everybody? Okay, great, I will start. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. How do I get that smaller? Okay. So thanks to everybody for the opportunity to talk today, especially for Poltekkes, and I appreciate the speakers before me, both speakers, and what I see from COVID, what we are having, it's a unique opportunity. Also, it's a very difficult time, a challenging time with the social distancing and everything. It's unique for in vitro diagnostic, for the medical community, because over the last half year, everybody in the whole world learned about diagnostic, about PCR, about rapid testing, something people didn't know before. And I think it's very helpful, not only for COVID, but for all other diseases, that people are understanding that. So my goal is today, I will not so much talk on specific methods. I think the two speakers before me talked a lot about that, but I will also talk more about future methods, what we might need for Corona. But first, let me go briefly to the SARS and to the COVID slides that I have. So that's the basic overview. I will talk about the SARS-2 coronavirus, about the different diagnostic methods. What is happening in the vaccine development? Because I think that is very important for the diagnostic lab. And what will happen, what may happen with regard to immunity later. So, main facts. The coronavirus, we heard a lot, it's a member of the beta coronavirus family. SARS in 2002 to 2004 had a couple of fatalities. MERS, the Middle East respiratory virus, came up in 2012, 2018. There are more than 5,000 different, or almost 5,000 different known coronaviruses. If you look to all the different mutations, more than 1,000 for SARS coronavirus, 330 bat-derived coronavirus, 3,000 MERS coronavirus. All of these are zoonotic, so they come from bats, possibly via pangolin. I think about 40, 50 million years ago, there was the first migration into the bats. That what is assumed. The virus itself is quite small. It has 27 proteins, about 4 structural proteins. We heard about that already, the spike, envelope, membrane, and the nucleocapsid. This is important for the detection in PCR as well as in the immune testing. And it invades our cell via the ACE receptor. So angiotensin converting enzyme receptor, that's the receptor which is used for the blood pressure. Here you see a schematic of the virus. So we have the spike glucoprotein, which actually gives it the name corona. When you first see that in microscopes, electron microscopes, it looks like the corona of a sun. So the spike protein is causing that, that shine outside of the virus. You have the membrane proteins, and the S protein, by the way, is also the one which has a cleaving site and a docking site for the ACE receptor, for the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. So you have the envelope proteins, inside you have the nucleocapsid and the RNA and nucleocapsid. A little bit about the similarities. So there is 89% similarity with the coronavirus 1. Overall, but if you look to different proteins like the spike protein, that is about 78% or 77.4. Why is that important? There are a couple of interesting studies in Germany, in the US, who have seen that people in closed facilities, meat processing plants or prisoners, they have a very high number of infection because people live in close proximity, but many of them are asymptomatic or never get any sign of sign of disease, and some of them already have antibodies. So there are a couple of studies that are now assuming, because of the overlapping immunity, because of the overlapping content similarity with coronavirus, we might be protected to some extent from the old coronavirus against the coronavirus too. But again, that is research. And if you look to the animal-derived coronavirus or SARS and MERS, the percentage is much less. So the important point are the ORFs. The first speaker with the PCR mentioned that already. And it is important for the PCR detection. And for the protein, you look more for the spike, and for the membrane protein, what Abbott and what Roche is focusing. So this is the spike protein, the important one, with the cleaving site and the docking site for the receptor. So the RNA, about 30,000 nucleotides, 27 to 31,000. And the four major proteins, and the S protein, which has actually binding fusion, and 8 accessory proteins. So that is one of the main targets to inactivate the virus in order to block him to enter our epithelial cells. How can you detect the virus? I think the two speakers before us talked in very detail about that. We don't have to go there, and the development is now going on in almost every country with its own methods. We even have RNA and rapid testing developed in Indonesia. You can do RNA detection, or PCR, how people call it, via isothermal or thermal PCR. So Abbott is doing the isothermal, whereas others doing the thermal PCR, the thermal reaction, polymerase chain reaction. You can detect the virus directly via fluorimetric method or electron microscopy. But that is not an IVD method. That is for research lab and for sure very expensive. You could even do culture. That is a very old traditional method, but very difficult, and you need biosafety lab too. That is one of the challenges we have at present. So biosafety lab 2 means you need to have a lab which is able to contain the virus so it cannot spread outside, which I think several hospitals are experiencing the challenge that they do have the instrument in order to do the PCR, but PCR means you amplify the virus DNA partly, and you extract, at least during the extraction process, you work with the live virus. You have to protect the analyst, you have to protect the people. So you need an under pressurized lab, a biosafety lab 2 level, in order to not spread the virus to the outside. So that is very expensive as well. There are 2 or 3 companies which do have rapid tests for PCR. That is Abbott, that is Bosch from Germany. There are 1 or 2 Chinese, Shineway, who have said so the RNA extraction is self-contained at present, sorry. So that is a good advanced step in a technology which helps. And in Europe, hospitals with a lower patient number, like if you have 10, 20, 30 patients per day, an instrument with a fully automatic PCR, like a point of care testing PCR, is quite helpful. If you have a large patient load, what we have at present, because almost nobody has immunity and a lot of people might get infected, you need high throughput PCR, and for that you need a large analyzer in a biosafety lab like labs like Prodia and others use. The second method of detection, one is the virus. You detect the DNA, or you detect it optically or via indirect immunological method. The second possibility is you detect an immune reaction of the person. So you detect the IgG or the IgM. You can do that rapid or instrumental. Or you can even look, if you take the serum of a person, if a person has the capacity to inactivate tissue culture growth of the coronavirus. That is something that is important for convalescent serum. So people who have recovered from corona, and also in the future for vaccination, how effective is the vaccination? This gives a summary of the different test methods about the timeline pre-infection, or no, not infection, pre-disease state. So people might get infected 14 days, 8 days before they get sick. So you incubate basically the virus. That is the time the virus needs to travel from the nose down the throat into your lungs, and in order to replicate, that might be 2 up to 14 days. People report even longer. So you only can work with PCR in the very early phase, and that is direct PCR. The major detection that is happening now in the acute phase here is RNA extraction. So you work with the real-time quantitative PCR, what the speakers before us talked about. And only after that, after about 5, 6, 7 days, the IgM will start and the IgG. So you can look into the IgM and IgG serological profile of patients after that time. At the same time, you can do the antigen testing. We heard that already from one of the speakers, which can be against the different protein sites here to get a fast, rapid test that is quite helpful. And I'm quite sure that will increase in the future. But both, whereas the PCR test is very well defined by WHO and by the nucleotides, by the sequence which is used for the primer, that is completely different for IgG and IgM. And I will come to that in the next slides. And that also gives a little bit the challenges. You heard in Europe, they have a sensitivity sometimes of 30%, 40%. Presently, I think for a rapid test, 80% in Europe is accepted. And I will come in the next slides to the reason why there is a challenge. Here's a little bit more about the total overview. So you do have RNA detection, so of the sequence of the virus at present. There are 108 different manufacturers available. There are rapid tests, like I mentioned, rapid tests like Abbott ID Now, like Bosch Vivalytic or Scheinway. They do detect the DNA, the RNA via PCR. And the targeted sensitivity they have is 80%, but mostly that depends on sample preparation and so forth. If you do that in a lab or in the research, again, you need a biosafety laboratorium, whereas with the normal rapid test, ID Now, that is used in the White House, or the Vivalytic is used in normal hospitals, in airports and so forth, and it takes about, under the Abbott takes about 10-15 minutes. The Vivalytic, this is isothermal. The Vivalytic takes about 2 hours. So you can do that in any normal setting. So that's quite a nice advancement. The sensitivity, I think that is the main thing, that is the advantage of DNA testing. You need roughly 6 to 10 copies of the virus. So whenever you do the sampling, whether that is nasopharyngeal, whether that is throat, where you take it, 6 to 10 copies of the virus are sufficient. If you do an antigen detection, if you do an antibody detection, the level of sensitivity is completely different. You need thousands or tens of thousands of more copies in order to get a signal. And the main reason is that you have in the PCR polymerase chain reaction an amplification which makes millions of additional copies. So you have to make sure there is no contamination. So you don't amplify the contamination, but that is a very, very high sensitivity. And that is something you can never reach with antibodies or antigen. But cost-wise, for sure, these are quite important. The challenge for antibody detection, so these are 108 manufacturers approved by the Global Fund. I do have the number in square bracket. I will send later out a PDF with regard to, my references, so everybody can click and go to the link of that. So these numbers come from Global Fund, which approves basically the number of manufacturers. So in contrast for the antibody detection, when you look at the internet, when you see the amount of emails we get as manufacturers and so forth, I presently think there's more than 1,000 rapid antibody tests available. And besides that, you have different tests like FACS. So for a lab, it's very challenging to know which test is good, which test is not so good for the rapid. That has to be questioned to some extent. Let me go first a little bit more to the PCR. We heard about that. So the different methods, you first have to extract the RNA. For that, you need the biosafety lab, unless you can do it contained in the instrument, like the Abbott Now or like the Bosch Vivalytic in a cassette. 15 minutes, 2 hours, everything self-contained. You do the extraction. You can go to Cepheid, you can go to Abbott, you can go to Roche, to the different analyzers, or to the PCR point of care test instruments. There are other tests in development, nanopore sequencing with a different number of nanopores. There's a CRISPR technique, the enzyme which was discovered about 10 years ago in order to do a new kind of amplification. There is even paper-based molecular biosensors. So the research is very huge. Whether that will lead to faster tests, I think so, but it might be 10 years, 15 years until we get there. Normal PCR, thermo PCR, and isothermal PCR is available with a good sensitivity. And we sure have the lab tests for the large volume, like we do have in the different governmental labs in Indonesia and so forth. The chart was shown by one of the first presentations, or by both. So it takes until the symptom onset, until you can detect something with PCR. PCR will be positive for about 2 to 3 weeks. Thereafter, PCR might probably be negative because you are shedding, you are getting rid of the virus. Then you can detect the antibody. And at the same time, you might be able to detect the antigen. Antigen might be longer available than the PCR because the protein might be more persistent in the body. The biggest problem for PCR, I think, is in sampling. Incorrect sampling, you saw that in the White House. Transportation, 2 to 8 degrees on ice in a tropical country, quite problematic. You don't have enough transport medium. Sample preparation for the extraction and time since infection. In the US, presently, it takes 15 days to get the result out. So even if you store the sample in a good lab, if it takes 15 days to get the results, the patient might well be infected or the patient is already negative again. So it is not important to get a result after 15 days. That's one of the challenges of the PCR. There's about 8 or 9 published sequences. The second speaker, Parmeshwar, mentioned that already. So the WHO agrees to or proposes to a different number of tests. And in Indonesia, we take presently 1 primer sequence. In Europe, in Germany, Charité, you have 2 or 3. I agree. I think it doesn't matter to increase sensitivity from 98 to 99 because you have such a high number of tests. PCR, whichever of the approved primers you take, is the gold standard, despite challenges and costs. But it's not sustainable if we are now at about 20, I think we are about 23 million affected people. So the numbers are staggering. Numbers are increasing dramatically. So we need rapid tests, and rapid tests have been around a very long time. Think about pregnancy testing. We do have some since 50 years or 40 years in the apotheke. Rapid testing is used in numerous numbers for dengue, for malaria. So something should come out here in Corona as well. But one of the challenges is it's such a short time. And the question is, what kind of influences do you have on the rapid test? In the DNA testing or RNA testing in the PCR, you don't have an influence because for sure you can use different reagents slightly, but in principle your primer is set and you will replicate millionfold this sequence. That is completely different. Test format, whether you use rapid or automized. Automized has a much higher sensitivity due to washing, 3-dimensional and so forth. Which method? Do you use color, luminometric, fluorimetric? Do you have an enhancement factor? How do you design your ELISA, direct, indirect, sandwich? Something many people forget to think about, and I will come actually in the later part of the presentation to that. How do you express the antigen which you use in order to capture the virus? Do you express it in a mammalian system? Do you express it in a bacterial system? Because a protein even gets post-translational modifications, or there are 7 or 8 different ways how a protein is modified after it is made by the ribosome and coming out of our cell and out of the ribosome. It's phosphorylated, methylated, glucosylated. Think about our blood group system. Why do people have different blood groups? This is basically based on sugar, on the different type of sugar cover on the sugars you have on the outside of the cell, the different A, B0 blood group. So different expression system, depending where the manufacturer of the antigen produces the antigen, whether that is the corona spike 1, spike 2, or whatsoever, it might be modified differently. So that is quite important. And what type of antibody do you use? Polyclonal, monoclonal? So the reason why you have 30 to 90% sensitivity, specificity, and so forth, are all of these things. What kind of test format, what kind of antigen, and what kind of origin. There is no rule, there is no law for that. So basically a lab has to review and trust the manufacturer. What is a good test that we have? This one is a rule, that is a regulation in PCR. What kind of primer do you use? In rapid testing or even in fully automatic clear chemoluminescence immunometric. That is probably the gold standard for sensitivity, but that might be completely different if we talk about effectivity of vaccination. Let me get that to a later point. You have seen these charts, it's a rapid test. The reason why that is not so sensitive because the lateral flow, you cannot wash thoroughly, you have only one dimension where the reagents flow and so forth. So sensitivity is completely different compared to a clear test. You have improved sample, improved washing, especially if you have magnets and you can resuspend your solutions with magnetic beads. You can do the washing in a 3-dimensional volume in your test tube. And then you have even an enhancement with chemoluminescence. So that would be the gold standard. Still, you do have the antibody and antigen selection. So how do you select the antigen and antibody in your system? There's a study that was done actually by BMJ publishing, I think in August. That's about 2 or 3 weeks old. I will have that in my reference list. The old-fashioned ELISA has about, for patients positive with COVID, about 84% correct, 16% wrong. If you look to lateral flow, so to the rapid test, 66% is correct, 34% are wrong. And that is a summary of 40 different studies with 29,000 different results. So lateral flow by far has the worst one, clear chemoluminescence by far the best sensitivity because you have a different magnitude of sensitivity. It's much better by patients which are COVID negative. So basically everybody is in the, so the specificity is quite good. Everybody is in the 98, 97, 98% range. But if you want to be sure and you don't want to miss false negative ones, so that is the point in the rapid testing. 30, 40% in a rapid test might be false negative. But it helps if you have a $3, $4, $5 test compared to a $50 test. And due to the number of testing, due to the number of patients, United States, 50,000 patients per day positive. Until last month, it was recommended to do pool testing in schools because they are opening now universities and schools. They stopped that 1 or 2 weeks ago. Why? The number of positive is so big. So if they have 100 people, they test them in 10 different pools. If 2 pools are positive, again, they have to test 20 or 30 back and so forth. Pool testing does not make sense anymore, so that presently goes to individual testing again. So that is a comparison of the different challenges of Corona. We do have tests already in Indonesia, so we do have locally produced rapid tests and even the antigen test. I do not have the data, but actually I see that as a very positive point and to help to increase supply and to solve the demand here. So that is something positive. There was one question for the second speaker, and I would like to address it with this chart as well. What kind of recommendation do you have the lab? And that is for the laboratorium. That is a little bit the summary from myself for all the labs, for the technician, for the analysts that we have here in Poltekkes. Select various test methods and include backup. In the United States, one of the biggest problems is supply chain. Very often, because of the huge demand of Corona, one supplier does not have all the components. One supplier is not able to deliver the reagent. So some PCR labs in the US have up to 7 or 8 different PCR methods, and they have to combine sample prep from method A with amplification from method B and so forth. So select your test and include additional backup. My most important recommendation to every lab, whether Philippines, India, or Indonesia, do a seroconversion panel. Why? Even in Indonesia, we do have challenges with HIV testing for the quality of reagent because there is no seroconversion panel. I trust most of you know or assume what is a seroconversion panel. So you can use yourself. I'm negative. I was tested a couple of times. So if I start today to take my blood every day, and then let's say in 1 or 2 months I would get an infection and then continue to get my blood, I do have a seroconversion panel because I know negative to positive, you do have a standardized serum how many days before, how many days after somebody was positive. So if you do have seroconversion panels, it really helps to validate reagents. And that is one of the challenges we have for HIV. It's very difficult to get a seroconversion panel to know when did somebody become infected with HIV. So in case you have a chance and you have a volunteer or 2 or 3, that might be nice. The other thing, the other topic, the second speaker mentioned, the external control to validate your result. That is extremely important. Make sure you don't have mistakes, even if you combine different reagents to be able to work well. The last point, that is something that will come up, and I will get to that in the next 2 or 3 minutes of my presentation when we talk more about the vaccine and vaccine-related testing, multiplex assays. That I think is something to check the quality of the result of a vaccination, or to check the quality of an antibody or an antigen. Something like a multiplex assay can help. So there are companies like DTEC. They do have a 5 different antibody assay in a fully automatic system. It's a single test for 5 different antibodies. So it's 2 different spike proteins, 1 total spike, 1 envelope, and 1 nucleus antigen. So you can use 1 serum from 1 patient and test it against 5 different antigens. Or you have similar multi-antigen IgG and IgM assays from Luminex. This one is already an IVD product in Europe, in Belgium, and we are starting to register that. And from Luminex, they do have flow cytometry with multiple MAC beads. That is for researchers only, but we are also on the way to look how we can get that registered. That's a little bit about the flow map, about the XMAP technology from Luminex. So these multiplex assays that come out, they will help very much for microarray testing, for getting a better idea if a test, an antibody test or an antigen test, or if a vaccine is working well. So especially for vaccination, that is something.
Excuse me, Mr. Ruben. We have 5 minutes left for doing the presentation.
Okay, that will work well. In 5 minutes, I will finish that. Why is that important? That is a chart of the vaccine targets for coronavirus vaccines. And you see, most people are using the S1 or S2 domain of the spike protein. So these are different immunogens which are used in the different vaccines. So only a small part, an epitope for an antibody is about 20, 30, 14, 20, 30 amino acids. So these are different immunogens. So how do we know that any test, any rapid test will recognize these different antibodies? Antibodies produced by the vaccine. To give you an overview, as of today, 170 vaccines are under development. 1 was launched. I don't know if you heard that. Yesterday, Sputnik 5 was launched from Russia. There are 30 different vaccines in clinical trials and 109 in preclinical trial. 4 different types. The challenges like supply chain, even glass vials. There are not enough glass vials for the vaccine. Quite challenging. Here are the 4 different types of vaccine. Virus, inactivated or weakened virus, a viral vector, that is the one from Sputnik. They are nucleic acid based, so that is BioNTech from Germany with Pfizer. That is Moderna, I think with Sanofi. I think I come to that in the next chart. So you see, virus and viral vector might present immunization, might have immunization against a complete virus. But if you do have a nucleic acid part, or you inject a protein-based part, then you will only get a certain amount of vaccine, which gives you a small part of the total genome. So here you see Sinovac Biopharma. They are working on a classical platform. Biopharma, I think they are talking now about 200 million vaccines in early middle of next year. That was used in the polio. So that is the classical platform. But one of the problems is you need a volume which is unbelievable. You need bioreactors for billions of vaccinations. That is a challenge. So what many people are pursuing, so the Gamaleya Institute with Sputnik 5, so the first vaccine that was launched for corona, or AstraZeneca, they are using a viral vector. So that is the viral vector for the adenovirus with AstraZeneca. SII, by the way, is the largest worldwide manufacturer of vaccines, the Serum Institute of India. So they are similar like biopharma, producing a lot. But still you need milligram or microgram. The advantage, if you go to RNA vaccine, you need picogram. So you need much smaller volumes in order to inject. But the problem is they will not produce antibodies. They might not produce antibodies against specific tests. So maybe immune testing from classical manufacturers might not work. So the viral vaccine present all epitope, nucleic acid. So Moderna, Pfizer only selectable epitopes. So the patient might have vaccination, might be immune, but he might not react to a classical test from Abbott, from Siemens, from Roche, and from other companies, similar for selected proteins. So that is the biggest challenge I see if you want to detect efficiency of the vaccine. Questions for the immune status, when you look to that, what nobody knows, how high is the immunogenicity? How many people will be protected by the vaccine? Dr. Fauci, the head of CDC, mentioned 60%. So that would be quite low, but still it would be a very good level above herd immunity. But that is a challenge. So who will be protected, who not? And how do we test that? How will there be the protection against variants? So if the virus mutates, so you have seen there are 4,000 different coronaviruses. So certainly COVID-19 will mutate. So many mutations, I think 200 or 300 have been found. And how long will be the longevity? So I think a lab has to be sure to be able to address these questions during vaccination. I think especially in January to June, January to December next year, 21, that would be a major target for labs to check, do we have a good vaccination and immunization of people? And we have to keep the different level of vaccine in mind, because the existing diagnostic test, IVD test, will not be able to cover these completely. Okay, so COVID-19, we heard that is a new normal. The world is learning tremendously about in vitro diagnostic, but also the IVD community has to learn a lot more, because COVID-19 will stay, will mutate, and we need new research methods and new tests in order to detect the disease and in order to detect the immune reaction against the disease. So the future actually is in a flexible, comprehensive adaptation to detect pathogen, multi-assay system. So that is the one thing, like rapid testing, like the Abbott, the ID Now or the Vivalytic from Bosch, but combined with low-cost rapid tests. So what we have already produced here in Indonesia. So I really like that the 100,000, 150,000 rupiah test, so $7, $10 for a rapid test. I think it's a very good way where we are going. But that is such a huge field, and COVID is giving so much headaches, but so much opportunities. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. So much today from my side. I hope I could fulfill most of your knowledge or your interest, and I welcome any questions, please.
Test. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ruben. That was a very informative lecture you presented. Now we have several minutes for Q&A. So the first question is from Novi from Indonesia. Is it possible to do PCR checks using the portable PCR, or only we use on the biosafety cabinet?
Could you repeat that?
Is it possible to do PCR checks, maybe to check the COVID with using portable PCR?
I think theoretically it's possible. I think there is 1 or 2 portable PCR. I have seen 1 or 2 already in ambulances in Kalimantan. They are already built in, but the main reason is these ambulances are designed as a BSL-2 lab, as a biosafety 2 lab. One of the biggest challenges for the portable test, for the POCT test from Europe, it's not available because of the huge demand. Abbott, I think, wants to launch it in August, September. Bosch wants to launch it in October. Within 3 months, Bosch went from 1 production line to 4 production line only for the reagent. And for sure, so the main thing is availability. But I think in 2 to 3 months, we will have rapid testing available in hospitals and in public places, whether that is airport and others. At present, it will take 2 to 3 months until it's simply physically available.
For the next question from Hafida Widyastuti from Indonesia. If the coronavirus still continue to mutate or get a mutation, is it possible to continue to use the rapid test as a clinical screening?
In principle, yes. But again, it depends on the design of the rapid test. Number one, mutations itself will probably be small, and 1 or 2 mutations will have a small influence on virulence, on the reactivity and so forth. So the rapid test, yes, can be used. But again, I very much recommend to screen for the sensitivity of the rapid test. So rapid test below 80% should not be used. So, so they should have a certificate against standardized tests like the instrument test, CLIA from Siemens, from Abbott, from Roche, in order to make sure they have a good correlation. If a test meets the standard of 80% sensitivity, even if there is a mutation, yes, I think you can go ahead. No worries.
For the last question from Amelia Tayato, Indonesia, how to use diagnostic COVID-19 with use electron microscope?
Oh, I'm not sure if we have a lot of electron microscope available here in Indonesia. I'm not familiar. I know that from Europe, where I was in the German Research Center. So basically, you would make preparations on a microscope slide, and you would prepare that with a small silver layer, with a small layer of metal ions, or other preparation methods. And then you would scan that with electron beams. But to do that, it's extremely expensive. But that's actually how the very nice pictures were produced, the color pictures in green, in yellow, and red. But I don't think I don't think even there is a need to do that at present here in Indonesia, because the best method would be FACS flow cytometry. If you do research, and I think Prodia is using that already, and we are talking to 2 or 3 other areas, I think that is hugely theoretical if you go to electron microscopy, but it is if you want to differentiate 100% against some other strains, or either you have to do the DNA analysis to check for mutations and for the virus, or if you want to do that physically, I think the electron microscopy you need in order to check the epitopes, the antigen antibody, connecting the antigen antibody come together nicely. For that you need. So I think there is one in UI, University Indonesia, but I'm not sure if they have capability for the liquid preparation of COVID. In Europe, definitely there is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ruben. I think that's enough for the Q&A session.
Terima kasih.
Okay, terima kasih, Mr. Ruben. And now I will read the resume from the first to third speaker. There are many tests for COVID-19 diagnostic, but we need the fastest test to detect the disease so we can control the outbreak currently. There are a few tests that use to diagnose COVID-19. There are detect the RNA composition of the virus with the RT-PCR, LAM, and NGS. Detect the antigen of the virus with the ELISA or immunochromatography. Detect the antibodies against the virus with the ELISA. Also, during the new normal, there are regions divided into the red, orange, yellow, green, and we have to follow the rule of the distancing and health protocol. And there are many main pathways to detect the coronavirus. For the first, by detecting the virus by using the PCR, or maybe by optical detection using the electron microscope. Detecting the human immune reaction, detecting the IgM and IgG by using the immunoassay. But the PCR testing for the SARS-CoV-2 is the gold standard. I think enough. Thank you, and I will return it to the Master of Ceremony.
Thank you very much for all speakers for an informative and insightful presentation. Thank you, Dr. Miswar, Mr. Heru, and of course, Dr. Ruben. And also, thank you, Mr. Aldi Adwitya and Mrs. Hanifah Ahmad, who helped scientific section in this webinar. Thank you very much. I think the link for questionnaire has been shared in the room chat. I want to remind all participants to do not forget to complete the questionnaire to help us evaluate the future event. And to fill it will take 3 to 5 minutes, and the questionnaire is available through the link that shows on your screen. Please fill the questionnaire first. I would remind all participants to complete the questionnaire because it will help us to evaluate for our future event. Please complete the questionnaire first. Langsung.
In the room.
Wow. So sorry for the technical problem. So the previous slide that shows a link is a wrong link. Please fill the questionnaire in the room chat from the link in the room chat. Thank you. So the next agenda is an online quiz, and all participants must answer all questions 30% minimum of the correct answer as a condition to getting a certificate. The link can be seen on your screen. I repeat, all participants must answer all questions. 30% minimum of the correct answer as the condition to getting certificate, and the link can be seen on your screen. I would like to inform all participants to start the quiz from now. And just for a reminder, quiz reward is only for local participants who registered and qualified all the terms and conditions. You only get the certificate if you qualified all the terms and conditions. I repeat. Thank you. I'm sorry, there's a technical problem. Please wait the link till it's shown on your screen. Please wait for a while. So sorry for this technical problem.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perkenalkan, saya Retno Martini Widiasih, Agent of Change dari perwakilan dosen jurusan Teknologi Laboratorium Medis Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3. Amanah lain saat ini adalah sebagai Ketua Program Studi Diploma 3 Teknologi Laboratorium Medis. Seperti kita ketahui, pada awal tahun 2020, COVID-19 menjadi masalah kesehatan dunia. Pada awal Maret, Indonesia telah melaporkan 2 kasus konfirmasi COVID-19. Pada tanggal 11 Maret 2020, WHO menetapkan COVID-19 sebagai pandemi. Dalam rangka pencegahan terhadap perkembangan dan penyebaran COVID-19, salah satu strategi yang dilaksanakan pemerintah daerah adalah memberlakukan kebijakan pembatasan sosial skala besar. Berdasarkan surat edaran Kementerian Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan, serta surat edaran dari Badan PPSDM Kesehatan yang diterbitkan tentang pembelajaran secara daring, dalam jaringan, atau pembelajaran jarak jauh, atau dapat juga disebut online. Sehingga seluruh sivitas akademika Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 pada semester genap tahun akademik 2019-2020 melaksanakan proses pembelajaran dan pengajaran.
Ladies and gentlemen, please fill our post test in the link that show on your screen. I will repeat that all participants must answer all questions 30% minimum of the correct answer as a condition to getting a certificate. If your score is below that passing grade, then you will not get a certificate. Please answer carefully. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all for today. Thank you for your excellent attention and apologize if there are any words that were displeasing to the participant here. Thank you for our speaker, moderator, the committee, and also all the who have succeeded in our event. For all speaker and participant, the certificate will be informed after the webinar. I want to say a special thanks to all management who has been standby till the end. Terima kasih kepada semua jajaran manajemen Poltekkes Menkes Jakarta 3 yang telah mengikuti sampai akhir acara. Special thanks to our director, Mrs. Yupi, first vice director, Mrs. Sri Mulyati, second director, Mrs. Nima Riasmini, third director, Mr. Bagja Mujianto, all department heads and sub-department heads, our student coordinator, head of department MLT, Mrs. Mega Pirawati, student coordinator of MLT, Mr. Haryadi, and of course our moderator, Mrs. Hanifah and Mr. Aldi Adwitya. And special thanks to DPP Patelki, DPP Patelki DKI, and Imatelki. And thanks to America Diagnostic. Thanks to all media partners that has been involved in here. And of course, thank you so much for all participants who has been make this webinar successfully run. Let us close this GENOME International webinar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you next year at the next MLT Student Association project. Do not forget to fill the post test, okay?
Pada awal tahun 2020, COVID-19 menjadi masalah kesehatan dunia. Pada awal Maret, Indonesia telah melaporkan 2 kasus konfirmasi COVID-19. Pada tanggal 11 Maret 2020, WHO menetapkan COVID-19 sebagai pandemi. Dalam rangka pencegahan terhadap perkembangan dan penyebaran COVID-19, salah satu strategi yang dilaksanakan pemerintah daerah adalah memberlakukan kebijakan pembatasan sosial skala besar. Berdasarkan surat edaran Kementerian Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan, serta surat edaran dari Badan PPSDM Kesehatan yang diterbitkan tentang pembelajaran secara daring dalam jaringan atau pembelajaran jarak jauh atau dapat juga disebut online. Sehingga seluruh sivitas akademika Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 pada semester genap tahun akademik 2019-2020 melaksanakan proses pembelajaran dan pengajaran dari rumah guna memutus penyebaran COVID-19. Pada tanggal 15 Juni 2020, diterbitkan surat keputusan bersama 4 menteri yang memberikan peluang untuk melaksanakan pembelajaran tatap muka dan diprioritaskan pada zona hijau atau zona yang tidak terdampak. Kebijakan dari Poltekkes Kemenkes Jakarta 3 menjadi acuan bagi jurusan teknologi laboratorium medis dalam mempersiapkan reopening pembelajaran praktikum di era new normal. Beberapa tahapan kami lakukan untuk persiapan meliputi survei kepada mahasiswa tentang kesiapan mahasiswa dan orang tua dalam reopening pembelajaran praktikum. Terlibat dalam sosialisasi dan identifikasi capaian pembelajaran mata kuliah yang membutuhkan tambahan praktikum secara luring pada rapat dosen. Terlibat dalam memberikan usulan strategi serta tata tertib kegiatan dalam rapat manajemen jurusan.